A lot of companies give like $1,000 a year. People don't even use it. They don't use it because they don't realize it's not the money, it's the time. They're not willing to make the time. And so that's my main thing is like, you have to make the time. You have to put that time into yourself. I understand you're beat. It's so much more enjoyable to just go home and put on Netflix. But every once in a while, like put on a YouTube of someone who's a leader in your field. Like learn about your field. It's not your responsibility, but if you want to grow, then you need to do it. Otherwise, don't be surprised when you get left behind.
Welcome to the Future of Less Work, where we're uncovering how work is evolving one piece at a time. I'm Nirit Cohen. With me today is David Fano, CEO of Teal, a personal career growth platform. David is no stranger to scaling businesses. He played a key role in WeWork's global expansion, and now he's focusing on helping us take control on our career path, right, David?
Absolutely.
Hello. Thank you for joining me.
So, thank you for having me.
I always start with this question. If the future of work is an unfinished puzzle, what's the piece you're working on?
Really, so much of the future of work dialogue, in my opinion, has been around like how companies shape the future of work. And I think a lot of work is around labor's people. That's changing. But helping the sort of professional labor force take control of their career and having a sense of agency. I think a lot of things have changed. And I do think a lot of people feel, sort of interesting happening today with what's happening in the U.S. federal government, but a lot of people feel a little out of control and that the company has a very strong hold on their career. And I want to help people.
It used to be this way, right? I mean, the deal they made with us, at least, or, with me, I can speak for myself, is you go study a good profession. By the end of your 20s, you have that, title, and then you find a good company that will hire you, and you just need to stay on track, right? Your ladder's set. They'll call you into training. They'll, promote you, and all you need to do is not fall off track. And that's how careers progressed. You looked up, you saw your boss, their boss, their boss. There it was.
Yeah, and with that's what we're focused on, is actually you have more agency in that process because the world is not that way anymore. And the company does not feel, I don't think they ever, like I'm sort of pure capitalist in that sense. I don't think they ever needed to. I think, companies did it because it was a good investment. It was the right sort of transactional thing to do, was to maintain the relationship. But in the world we live in today and the speed of business, that might not be the best for companies sometimes, right? You might, the world's changing. You need people with new skills and new abilities. But, I want to help people understand that. And so that they should be on top of their career. It's not waiting for the company to train you. You got to train yourself. It's not waiting for the company to say, hey, we're doing a comp review and to make more money. It's like, no, know your worth and go get paid more. And so very much about thinking about the individual as the enterprise. And what infrastructure are they giving themselves to empower themselves to grow and sort of act like a business of one, while still being a full-time employee and not sort of pursuing solopreneurship or entrepreneurship, because, that's got its own challenges.
So you're basically saying, even if you're a salaried full-time employee, right? Not gone off to start building you have to take ownership to manage your own career within being a salaried full-time employee.
100%. Don't wait for the company to say, here's our career pathing. Because ultimately a company is going to guide you towards what's best for them, right? And in a perfect world, what's best for them is what's best for you. But that's pretty tricky. If I'm a marketing manager and now I want to be a product manager, there may be some companies that enable that to happen. But the majority, in fairness, this isn't a knock on them. We're going to say, look, we'd rather hire someone who's a seasoned product manager. Like, why are we going to make the investment in you to help you transition from a marketing manager to a product manager on a pure sort of like dollars and cents basis? There's loyalty, there's relationships, there's people who have potential. So there's all sorts of reasons why I could argue why they wouldn't do that or why they should. But time is money. I think the pressure is higher than ever to operate quickly. So I think for the most part, hiring someone who's already got those abilities with a proven track record is a safer bet anyway than betting on someone who hasn't done that job before.
So what you're saying if I understand you correctly, is go kind of manage your employability so that you can make the next move.
Always be thinking about what's next for sure.
What
Yeah.
about this? What about my current job? I keep thinking about how the conversation these days is, AI is coming in. It's going to take huge chunks of what you are doing in your current job, right? Change your job on you, even if you're not changing the job, right? And I don't know what that means to my ability to even stay within the company, even if I don't want to move, right?
Yeah. And then my position is you got to take ownership of that. I think you need to, I think what we've seen historically is people manage their careers in a very reactive way. It's like, oh, I never saw that coming. It's like, no, that it is on you. It's on you to see that coming. It's on you. Like our position is you need to stop abdicating your sort of career path and your future to the company and hope that the company is going to shepherd your career. I mean, that was the world, right? You'd stay there for 40 years. You're on the sort of career lazy river and it just sort of like worked its way. And at the end, you got a gold watch. And that's just not the world we live in today. And
Yeah.
you need to understand that we live in more uncertain, fast-paced times, and you need to take control of your career. That doesn't mean starting a business, but I think that does mean having more conversations more often, right? Understanding that the idea of loyalty is sort of a false one, and you should be talking to companies once a quarter. Apply to jobs all the time. When a recruiter inbounds you on LinkedIn, take that call. I don't think there's like corporate monogamy. Like there's nothing wrong with you to go. You're not cheating on your employer, right? You're looking out for yourself. I actually just had this conversation with my mom yesterday. She's like, I just had someone resign and they didn't tell me. And I was like, why would they tell you? Like, why would they tell you? Like the risk is so much worse than the reward. It's like, yeah, but that's like relationships and you manage relationships. And it's like, look, I hear you, but at the end of the day, you kind of got to look out for yourself. And I think that's very much the world we're looking into. And I think part of looking out for yourself is there's a view of what I'm saying right now that's just super selfish, but I also think you have to think about investments, right? It's not about like short-term transactions. We do make investments, right? We make long-term investments, and I put relationships in that category of long-term career investments. They're career assets, and you shouldn't downplay those. Those are important, right? So I think just like walking out on a boss is bad management of an investment, but you still need to weigh out the plus minuses.
Yeah, I think first of all, I do totally agree with you that the life cycles of careers have shortened, right? And so it's not a question of if you're going to hit a downturn, it's just a when, right? So, and I call downturns, they could be external, like you said, something happened externally and you didn't see it coming, which you should, because you need to start looking at the signs if you realize that downturn's coming. But they can also be internal, right? Like I'm not happy with what I'm doing, it's not fun anymore. My boss, I don't, like them. I don't like the environment. And so this idea actually, to me, it means earlier that you need to start, you talk about the relationship. I really love that, right? You start talking to your network, or I'd say you build your network not when you need it because you're looking for a job, but actually when you don't, when everything's just fine.
100%. I tell people careers are full of should-haves. I should have maintained a relationship with a manager. I should have, I should have gotten my coworkers' personal email addresses. I should have saved, all my work, because, they sort of think of their career as like, oh, it's just the relationship with their career is one. It's like, oh, it's just like the thing I do to pay the bills. And so I would argue, no, make it something you take ownership of, even just this idea that's like, oh, I'm doing the work for my boss. It's like all the work is for you. Every experience you get, those are your skills. Those belong with you. Those experiences, those belong to you. Those relationships, those belong to you. Think of them that way. Take ownership of those things. Don't think it's like, oh yeah, well, my boss told me to do this. It's like, have an opinion. Actually, people want to work with people that have opinions.
So
and I think take a more assertive view.
You worked for WeWork for quite some time, and to me that was kind of cool because my first future work project, it was 2011, and I put a slide up there that said everywhere was going to be the new location. Right, this is 2011, and WeWork had just formed, I think 2010, and this idea that people can work in places that are not their office. I think over time we saw, COVID brought that into corporate, right? But we saw a lot of people start to do that in kind of non-salaried employee world. How do you move from that environment to starting Teal for actually people who are, like you said, in the salaried employee world, as opposed to entrepreneurs?
So I'm a person who has always liked to work. But part of liking working is being pretty rigid about not doing things I didn't like. I've been fortunate enough to be able to do that. But it's also just an unwillingness. Like I would just quit if I didn't really like my job. And so I've always thought that work is a really powerful thing. It gives us purpose if we find the right work. And I really resonated with WeWork's mission of enabling people to do what they love and, make a life, not a living. The part that never fully sat right with me, that it was so targeted at the entrepreneur. And entrepreneurs are great. I don't want to sound like a hypocrite, but I also know a lot of people who I went to architecture school. And so a lot of people in sort of my cohort and friend group thought that their path to like career fulfillment was to start a practice. And it's not what they wanted to do. They wanted to be craftspeople. But as soon as you start a practice, you have to do billing and you have to do marketing and you got to do payroll. And so I think there's a way to have a sense of autonomy and career fulfillment without all of the other layers that come with starting a business. And that for me, and I think there's far more people who don't want to do those things, want to be craftspeople, want to love their work, but not feel complete sense of lack of control, a lack of control.
So you don't have to be an independent to end up doing what you love, which
Correct.
is, I think, a lot of the conversation these days in the market, right? Are the companies moving in terms of how they allow us to craft our jobs and our career progression? And even you're suggesting that in order to stay employed but still do what you love all the time, it's almost like you need to do the job hopping to the next thing, because the assumption is you can't necessarily kind of negotiate what you need. And I don't necessarily even mean salary, but the bigger picture of everything else that work is, right, within your current employer.
Yeah, for me, it's about having an honest understanding of the system we're working in, right? Like I'm seeing a lot of the RTO pushback, and it's like, look, I get it. It sucks if you had it, and for a lot of reasons. And there's a lot of great things that come of being able to work remotely, but ultimately it's the company's prerogative. Like they are paying for labor. And what I like to say is like, it's your prerogative. Great. Start the process. Find another company that has it. Right? I do think those companies will get great talent, incredible talent that can't make their way into the office. But like, do the work. Go find that company. Start that process. And a lot of what we're trying to do at Teal is the reason people can't do this is because they don't have the time. It's laborious. It's annoying. It's not enjoyable work. And now that's where technology, things like AI and having your own career agents can do some of this work for you. And you can feel a little more empowered to have technology apply to jobs for you while you're sleeping. Good quality jobs, tailoring your resumes for you, potentially networking for you. These are things that the minutes in the day, there weren't enough of them for you to do.
You think that's possible? So ultimately we say, okay, I don't know if it's true or not, but there's a lot of information on the number of job postings out there that are not real. And, that a lot of the real stuff that happens is people talking to people. I've actually written about this. I call it the secret conversation, right? So you and I sitting in the room and we're discussing this need and we say, who do we know that can do this, right? And that never gets translated into a job, what we used to call a job posting. It's kind of more about the relationship, the network, the getting people to know that what you're able to do and who you are and that you're looking.
I think those exist, but they're far smaller than they're reported. I think the majority of jobs are posted online. The majority of jobs are filled by people applying online.
Okay, then what does AI do that can make a difference in this process?
Well, I mean, sometimes I don't know when last time or if ever you've tried to do an online application through Workday.
Oh, thank goodness I didn't.
It takes 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't think that's inherently a bad thing. Right. Because, you want to, there's like let me not pick on Workday. Yeah. Just like applying for a job online. it takes time. It takes time. You want to do a good job, right? It's like applying to a college. Like you want to put your best foot
Plus,
forward.
it gets you thinking, right? Who am I professionally? How am I going to describe what my value is? How could my potential? How do I translate the jobs I did into skills and capabilities that are more broad or descriptive, right?
Yeah. So I'm an employed professional. I'm clocking out at 5, 6 o'clock. I've got life, partner, kids, who knows? So what do I have? Maybe 30 minutes a day to spend on this? Maybe. Right. And I'm already, and you're not even getting like the best parts of my brain because they're already pretty tired. And so they're just like, yeah, I'm just not going to do it. I'll just stay. And then something snaps, right? Something like really changes. The company makes a massive change, or unfortunately, maybe you lose your job, or then people take action. But it's almost like the drops, and they don't do it. And so I think technology can enable people to do these things sooner, more proactively. That again, that's why I said they say, oh, I should have applied to jobs every once in a while.
So you're actually, I think, saying something even more stronger. You're saying if the tools know who you are, what you're looking for, and they can proactively bring you matches, right? I mean, I know LinkedIn sometimes sends me this email that says, here's some job postings that, you look like, and I'm not even open to work, right? But if the algorithms are doing this for you, you might end up saying, that one looks interesting. Why not? Right. I wasn't looking, I didn't get to that break point yet, but I'm always on. So we're really moving to that always on mode that we keep talking about.
Agreed. That's at its core what we're trying to do. Because what's fundamentally different about job boards is LinkedIn's doing that because their customer is the company, right? So I would venture to say very few of the opportunities that make it to your inbox are like, oh, you know what? I'm going to drop what I'm doing and go after that opportunity. It's not to say because they're not capable of writing fantastic algorithms. They have the smartest engineers in the world, but ultimately they're an advertising platform, right? And so what they're doing is helping companies get in front of brilliant people and hope that they can entice them to apply, versus saying, my customer is the candidate.
Is the person.
And my job is to go find the jobs that they would find the most compelling. And I'm not being paid to promote those jobs, right? I'm actually being paid as if I were a talent agent to go out and find you the most compelling opportunities to help you grow your career and actually be choosy and selective and not inundate you. Well, who knows? If you want 100 a day, no problem. I can get you 100 a day, but actually, show me the 1% that I think I'm a perfect match for. Great. Then we'll make sure we keep doing that for you.
So I'm curious, if since you're able to look at all this data, and I actually heard you say something about expecting to see high-paying careers that are for people that don't have 4-year degrees. Is that something you're finding?
So I haven't looked at that data yet. I mean, in terms of like what's reported, well, again, we'll see what changes. I do think we are going to move more and more to a world of proof over credential. Because if you look at like what AI is enabling people to do, your depth of knowledge on a particular programming language or an advertising platform, or how to use a particular tool is just not going to matter, because you're going to get that through some sort of agent that's going to help you. And so it's going to be more about like what you've achieved, what outcomes you've achieved, what things you've done versus just what you know.
And how do you know? Because part of what troubles me, we've been talking about this whole idea of skills matching versus, standard resume criteria for a really long time. The problem is those are still self-reported, and they're also very generic, right? Everybody's a team player. Everybody's an innovation, how do you know who I am and what my contributions are?
So we don't know right now, right? My speculation is we will move to a more assessment-based world potentially. I can say what we're doing at Teal is we do a work trial. Everyone that we hire works here for a week. We pay them what their salary would be. Work trials may move to a month. Who knows? I think you're just going to have to prove it, because it's the credentialing on a skills-based matching basis is becoming easier and easier, right? Like more people, we make software that helps people write a better resume. Now, the tricky part is there are people in the world who will lie about their abilities. and use these technologies or oversell who they are. And so I think the need to prove it is going to get higher and higher. Another mechanism is some sort of like third-party arbiter of credentialing, but it's not going to be through the sense of a certificate. I
Which,
don't think
yeah, which
certificates.
essentially is what we use today. A lot of what we use those degrees for, and frankly, also the prior experience. We use that because if I know he went to this school with this degree or worked at this employer in these jobs, I'm kind of assuming that that translates into some sort of credentials.
Right, but I think what we're seeing happen is going to be like, I want on-field experience. Right, so it's one thing for you to have a computer science degree. It's another thing to know that we're getting more specific with our needs. So in my case right now, I'm hiring a product manager. Right, I want someone who has specifically worked on a consumer application, high volume signups, with a very finely tuned set of muscles on user activation. A degree isn't going to be a proxy for me on that. Right, like, and even the fact that they worked at Duolingo, for to say. They might have worked on the back-end enterprise systems for billing for Duolingo. So I need to know that they've got that super specific experience. And so either like I'm going to give them a project and I'm going to like sort of set up a situation where they're going to prove to me that they do that. I'm going to do it through some form of references. I want to see it through some form of case study, which even then I'm going to need to kind of validate probably through references. So I think the validation and proof is going to become so much more important.
Yeah. So I'm thinking about the number of people you're going to have to filter with almost like investing in getting them to do work by the time you find, the one you actually want to hire long term. I think we're going to need to figure that out. If I go back to what you're trying to do with Teal, I'm kind of reverse engineering this. I'm thinking, okay, if I'm a person now and I want to prove to you that I am that person, right? But we agreed before that what you don't want me to do is spend 45 minutes with every, application thinking about how do I write my resume into your language and show you that I have your kind of skills. How do you do that? How do you find the match?
It becomes more about quality than quantity. I think because the systems today are about like top of funnel on both sides, I would rather tell someone, look, find 10 opportunities that you're super excited about and spend 5 hours on each than 1,000 opportunities that you're spending 5 minutes on each.
Well, what's an opportunity? Opportunity is an opportunity to do an assignment, to actually apply
No,
kind of.
companies that have like an open role
Okay.
that I think I'm a good fit for, that I'm excited for and I'm a good fit for.
And
Now,
then how will I show them that I'm a good fit? Through a standard resume?
that's where the process starts. We'll see. It's like, to be seen if the process continues to start that way. But I'd say for the next 24 months, the process starts that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Like we said, we don't have a lot more to go on today, right? All I know is my credentials, the way a resume describes them. But they're not going to stay that way, though. I don't think that I sure hope that if we look a couple of years down the road, we'll have better ways to measure who you really are professionally.
Again, no one gets hired off the resume, right? The resume just gets you the initial screen.
Right.
So I think that's also a little bit kind of like a misnomer in today's dialogue. It's like the resume just gets you your screen. At the end of the day, it's your interviews that kind of get you hired. So you still need to, with your voice and with your actions, prove that you're worthy of the job. The resume just gets you in the door.
What about upskilling and reskilling? So my need. So I keep thinking again, going back to AI and everything that's happening. The idea that you started there, right? I'm working at a job, then I need to make sure that I'm training on where I want to go versus necessarily where my employer wants me to go. How do I know from everything out there? How do I make time? How do I find the right tools? I did see you say something about upskilling becoming even more important these days.
Yeah, I think it's being an active participant in your career. It's like, sure, when you go home, watch Netflix, but also read like the publications that you care about, right? And I think you think people are like, oh, what's the company's learning and development budget? It's like, what's your personal learning and development budget? Right? We've kind of been trained to like, oh, you learn, what is it, like learn, earn, return was kind of like it's like you learn, and people think about their life like a Gantt chart instead of swim lanes. And that's the transition we need to make. It's like, it's not just that there was this period of my life where I learned and now I just work. You need to be continually learning and growing, and you got to take it upon yourself. Like, professional development books aren't cringy. You should read them, right? You should subscribe to the publications that have to do with your craft. If you're a product manager, you should be listening to at least once a month one of Lenny Rachitsky's podcasts. And I think some people just think like, well, what's the company's job to continue to upskill me? And it's not. It's yours.
Yeah,
It is
it's always amazing to me that, and I worked as a salaried employee for almost 30 years, right? So I get it, but it's like if the company doesn't send you to a conference, you don't go, right? And today, when I've been on my own for about 6 years now, and it's part of my standard budget, right, to schedule these conferences and go. And today I tell people you have to put, time, energy, and budget and on your own development, even if you're a salaried employee.
It's a perfect example. Actually, a lot of people don't even use this career development budgets that their company give them.
Yeah.
A lot of companies give like $1,000 a year. People don't even use it. They don't use it because they don't realize it's not the money, it's the time. They're not willing to make the time. And so that's my main thing is like, you have to make the time. You have to put that time into yourself. I understand you're beat. It's so much more enjoyable to just go home and put on Netflix. But every once in a while, like, put on a YouTube of someone who's a leader in your field. Like, learn about your field. It's not your responsibility, but if you want to grow, then you need to do it. Otherwise, don't be surprised when you get left behind, because it doesn't happen naturally. It's not that different than your health. If you don't eat well, you're not going to be healthy. If you don't work out, your body's not going to do it. So if you don't put that level of like proactive care into your career, it will wither and you will be left behind.
And I will, one of the things that I know I've written about in the past is, and it goes with the same idea, right? You get healthy, you go sign up for a gym, right? Or you find a personal trainer, because when they're showing up at your door, you can't say, oh, I don't feel like it. You already paid, so you're going to do the session. So we tell people, figure out some sort of pathway that shows up at your door that forces you, right, to put aside that time and budget. And it could be, it could be anything that works for you, but, having lunches with people outside of your regular circle, like I said, signing up for conferences, maybe even joining some professional network, something that forces you to kind of lift your head from your day job and do something else, so that you interact with the other portions of the world, right?
And that's the mindset shift. It's like this idea of like, well, that should happen while it's on the clock. It's like, no, it shouldn't. Those experiences belong to you. Those skills belong to you. Go do a weekend workshop on how to become a better product manager. Well, the company should pay for it. It's like, why? The company could pay for it. That'd be great. They might have a budget. But at the end of the day, those skills belong to you.
Yeah.
Right. And so why do we make this distinction when it has to do with like professional and skill and craft post education, which we probably paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for, that the company should pay for? Again, if they do, great. That's a great company that invests in their employees. That's amazing. But this expectation that they should is where I think people need to make the mind shift. That belongs to me. Right. And you saw it with like physical tooling, right? Like chefs oftentimes bring their own knives to the kitchen.
Yeah. And when we ended up doing a lot of the bring our own, right? Because once upon a time, the company gave you everything. They gave you the cell phone. They even gave it. I'm sorry, I'm old enough to say that, but I remember they gave us like a second phone line because we had a modem at home, right? Yeah. And it took up the phone. So they paid for this stuff. And then suddenly somebody said, well, everybody's, got a cell phone now. I'm not going to pay you for your cell phone anymore. Yeah. Yeah. So totally agree. I think, there's two pieces to it. One is, as you're saying, companies do offer, and I put my HR hat on, companies offer a lot of training that people don't take them up on. So this idea that you have to stop your work and find the time to go develop yourself. And one other thing I used to say to, the people that say the company should pay, if it's still yours when you walk out the door, then it's you. then it's about you. If you leave it behind when you leave your business card behind, then it belongs to the company. So if it's something that you'll take with you, then consider it growing your own skills and capabilities and worth, right?
And that's the mindset shift that we're trying to help people make, and we want to build tools in it, because a lot of times people can't do it because they just don't have the time. So anything where we can sort of compress time and leverage technology to give them that time back, obviously we want to do that. But in terms of like an attitude shift and just like an understanding that the career belongs to me and I need to take a proactive role in shaping it, and it's not the company's responsibility to do that at the end of the day. Again, I think great companies are active participants in that process, but it's not a basic expectation.
Yeah. Yeah. And, again, my HR hat on, I keep thinking what that means for companies, right? So if we go the route where these tools make it easy for people to match with the jobs that are, a good fit for them, then it won't get to the point where you're looking for jobs, because jobs will find you. And this whole idea that I'm open for work, right? Isn't I'm a job seeker now, but I'm a professional working, and the next thing comes along and I say, oh, that looks interesting. And there I go. Right. And that's a whole different employee engagement conversation for organizations, which is going to be really interesting. So I want to challenge our listeners, right, to take a moment to think. What are the biggest things holding you back from your dream career? Right? Is it the right skills? You don't know where to start? Is it financial concerns? Maybe you're just afraid to make the change, which a lot of people admit to having. Drop the answer in the comments or on social media. Don't forget to hashtag future of less work. And I will commit, and David, you might too, right? To actually personally respond with thoughts, resources, ideas, anything that helps you get unstuck, right? So that you can take the next step forward.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a tricky thing, because also even so many of those people, this is the trickiness with the career, right? Is that's borderline existential. I'm putting my name out there. I was like, oh, I'm interested. My manager might see it. There's so many like taboos. And so it's like with the career, it's tricky. I'm trying to shine a light on this, because when we think about people making career moves, you kind of can't talk about it publicly, right? Like I'm currently employed. Let's say I'm a junior product manager. I want to grow. My boss isn't leaving anytime soon. My only path for growth is through them. So I need to leave. I like this company. If I comment on this thing I just said right now, I'm sort of outing myself, and it is in people's minds. It's tricky to have these conversations out loud. And part of what I want to be is, if I can, is like a conduit and a proxy for these folks, because they are, and we'll go as far as to say like suffering in silence, but they want to make these moves, and it's tricky for them to have a place to talk about it.
So the way I usually think about this and talk about it is, actually, I tell people, so you don't think about it like you're looking for a job. Think about it. We're going back to the networking conversation, right? So you are regularly, lifting your head up from your day-to-day job on a given schedule, and it could be once every 2 weeks for a coffee break, right? And you ask, what's new out there? What's interesting? What is something I would like to learn more about? And you can do it within organizations, because you could say, well, somebody, I met somebody in training last week from that department. I'd love to hear more. I'll schedule lunch with them, right? Or you could do it externally to say, I saw somebody on, LinkedIn, or I met somebody at a conference, or I saw a company post something and I really want to hear more, and you schedule something else, right? So if you don't think about this as looking for work, but as ongoing development, it will end up matching work, right? But that's also less of an outing, because you're not out there saying, I'm looking for a job. You're actually saying, I'm out there networking, learning about the world, learning about my profession, learning about, what's new in the areas that are of interest to me.
I'm looking to grow, and the means might be switching jobs, but ultimately I want to grow. And I think that's the thing to hone in on. So I completely agree with what you're saying.
Yeah. And frankly, if you have that conversation with your own manager, you might discover that there are tasks in the organization or opportunities that, might come up your way, but you never voiced that you were interested. And so nobody knows, right? So that's another good reason to do that. So I have a question for you, and I always kind of like to wrap up with it. What do you think? Because we always talk about the answers, right, to the how things are changing and what we think
Mhm.
about them. I actually want to ask you for a question. What's the one question we should all be asking ourselves these days about how the world of work is changing and how we change with it?
A question I can always go back to is like, what's next? Just like, what's next? What's next for me? What's next for my occupation? What's next for my industry? And like really forcing yourself to let yourself go a little and make that a fun question, not a scary question, because then that can help you think about where to grow. And I'm a product manager. What's next for product management? I'm a marketer. What's next for marketing? And to just really allow yourself, because I think I also see a lot of folks want to sort of naysay. Well, that's not going to happen. It's like letting yourself free and in a sort of unencumbered way, think about what's next. That's exciting. That, looking at those things through the lens of opportunities rather than problems. That's exciting. And you might even uncover things that excite you, that are possible. I've never been able to code. What's next? Everyone's gonna be able to code. So I got Cursor and I'm building things because it's fun and it's exciting. And so I think thinking about what's next and really removing your fears around like where technology is going and what's possible, and taking more of a growth mindset towards things, and say like, what's next with that combination of a growth mindset is really like, I just feel like, I don't know, we're living in this sort of this polar world of like most uncertain yet exciting times.
Yeah, I love it. In fact, I actually recently wrote an article and I called it "Let Go to Grow," right?
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Yeah, because I think part of it is identifying what it is that's holding us back, and sometimes you need to let go of pieces of your professional self to actually redefine yourself. So you can say what's new in product marketing, but you could also say, I've always been interested in coding. I didn't, take that major. Actually, there's all these tools. Let's play around with them and maybe we can create stuff. And then my next job is something that isn't called product marketing, but some evolution of these new skills that I've acquired, right?
I love that so much. I just see so many people that are held back by these limiting beliefs. They chose to be a lawyer because the past 4 generations of their family were lawyers. I'm like, I don't even like this. It's like, well, then go do something else. Oh, but I have a whole degree in it. It doesn't matter. The whole sunk cost fallacy with careers is the worst. So the let go to grow. I love that. I'm going to start saying that to everybody. I love it.
Awesome. All right. Good. So thank you, David, for joining me today. It was a really inspiring conversation on career pathways, right? So if you're listening, I hope that you've decided to do one thing that you didn't do, but were kind of thinking about before this conversation. For more about David Fano and his work on Teal, check out the links in the podcast description or visit the Teal website. Thank you for listening to The Future of Less Work. And remember, the new social contract is a win-win between people and organizations. Your best people don't work because they have to. They don't work because you tell them to. They work because they want to, because in working for you, they're also accomplishing their own purpose in life. Until next time.